Seen lots of yellow shirts coming up.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where everybody is at the moment.
Yeah. It's lunchtime, so people can see you. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
For being here. My name is Amy Alvarez. I'm a poet and the author of Makeshift Altar, and as of this morning, an associate professor for practice at Boston College. I'm excited to be in conversation with my co-panelists here, Cynthia Manick and January Bill O'Neill, here at the Soul and Celebration panel at the 2024 Virginia Festival of the Book. So this is a program of Virginia Humanities, the Virginia State Humanities Council. In a few moments, I'm going to introduce my fellow panelists, but first, can you please make sure you silence your cell phones? This encourages you to be aware of the space, take note of the exits. We have a bookseller on site. They're actually right back here. And my fellow panelists and I will be signing books right in that room over there, right after the program. So we'd love to meet with you at the book table. We'd also like to thank the Virginia Festival of Books premier sponsors, Michelle and David Baldacci. And because of their support, we're able to offer this exciting event. Many festival events are free of charge, but not free to produce, and your support helps. So you can give by using one of the QR codes, which are somewhere dedicated for giving. I think there's one back there. We also need your input. So right before the kind of open audience Q&A, you'll receive some surveys to fill out. These surveys are immensely helpful, so we encourage you to take a moment and share your thoughts, please. On to introductions. I'm going to read all the author bios at once so you can enjoy the reading without interruption. So first, there's Cynthia Manick, the author of No Sweet Without Brine, which received 5 stars from Roxane Gay and was selected as a New York City Public Library Best Book of 2023, editor of The Future of Black Afrofuturism, Black Comments and Superhero Poetry, which I love, winner of the Lesoke Prize of Collected Poetry, author of Blue Hallelujahs. She received fellowships from Cave Canem, Hedgebrook, McDowell, Chateau de Naples, among other foundations. For 10 years, she curated Solstice to Review, a quarterly reading series, which supported poetry, storytelling, and featured emerging poets, poet laureates, and Pulitzer Prize winners. Her poem, Things I Carry Into the World, was made into a film by Motion Poems, and is debuted on Tidal for National Poetry Month. She's a storyteller and performer at literary events, libraries, universities, and museums. Her work has been featured for Voices, an audio play by Aja Monet and Eve Ensler's V-Day, the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, Brooklyn Rail, The Rumpus, and other outlets. And she currently serves on the editorial board of Alice James Books. She lives in New York, but travels widely for poetry. And next we have the fabulous January Bill O'Neill, who's an associate professor at Salem State University and the author of Glitter Road, Rewilding, Misery Island, and Underlife. From 2012 to 2018, she served as the executive director of the Massachusetts Poetry Festival, which I loved and brought my students to when I used to teach there. Her poems and articles have appeared in the New York Times Magazine, Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, American Poetry Review, Poetry, and Sierra Magazine, among others. Her poem, At the Rededication of the Emmett Till Memorial, was a co-winner of the 2022 Allen Ginsberg Poetry Prize from the Poetry Center at Passaic County Community College. She currently serves as the 2022 to 2024 board chair of the Association of Writers and Writing Programs, the major AWP. Virginia native, O'Neill earned her BA from Old Dominion University, her MFA from New York University, and she lives in Beverly, Massachusetts. And very briefly, I'm Amy Alvarez, I'm the author of Makeshift Altar. I'm also the co-editor of Essential Voices, COVID-19 Anthology. I have some fellowships and different things. I'm an Appalachian poet, and I was selected as one of 2022's Best New Poets. My work has been in Plowshares, Missouri Review, Rattle, Colorado Review, etc. I was also born in New York City to Jamaican and Puerto Rican parents. I taught at high schools in New York City, Boston, and I currently teach at West Virginia University. I'll be headed back to Boston in the fall. We'll have Cynthia come up and share her work with us first.
Thank you, Amy, for that lovely introduction. I'm going to read about 5 poems for you guys. How's my audio? I'm doing good?
Good.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we're many things to many people. This poem is called Self-Portrait Number 5, Feelings and Lullabies. Some people think I was born savage, biting at hands, clouds, and daggers, with no softness to be found. But I contain whispers, bright coral beads, stacked the language of blood, jostling against itself. Coconut oil, curves molded by my mother's thumb, rod bones, and something wild. Sometimes I'm a brown bird, songbird, who knows the tongue can be a land not beaten. The hot arm ache in someone's back while the TV's on. Or it can be a pistol. It covers all my bristled barbs, blue and yellow howls, and a ragdoll heart. I shook up my father's baritone the day he left. I turned Brine Lake. That never stirs the same way twice. Salty assholes and smiles boiled over. It's not a lie to say while still learning to love the frames of undressed trees. My glasses, the Medusa hair that defies every comb, red pomegranates, my baby self, a little girl inside who still craves model trains, Josie and the Pussycats cartoons, and wonders about the spaces between the teeth and all the ribs. So my next poem, I was thinking about how Black poets write. And someone told me that Black poets write love poems the least. And I was like, that's not true. So I immediately went to refute that with this poem. What did I do? Okay. 3 a.m. and the moon is curled like a sea. And I didn't dream of coffins today, or a scattering of names or trees I can never recall. Instead, there was a silver dog chasing joy in the shape of a hat, a long-dead cousin eating Jack and Jill cookies, and my hands held fistfuls of not yet ripe tomatoes that needed a dark bag or place to come true. I need to go shopping or check on a relative. The dream book says that tomatoes symbolize harmony, but my mind wonders how long it takes for a star to bow out. If his last beats are like the barefoot heart and love for the first time. I once read that Black poets write love poems the least, as if we're too busy swallowing miles worth of dust, tallying wounds, knowing how often atoms fissure and our bodies part, but can we not do both? Banish the lines, go brawless and numb, fumble in the dark with a sweat so sweet, he or she is well fed. Fill pages with bathwater and breaths ungraceful. Moving like a train of flowers because it's what we saw on our very first date. In another dream, I see the fleet of newly painted dove white subway trains, ugly beautiful, as if a ghost through pure light. People both alive and past are full of bright colors I can't name. They move so smooth my ear barely recognizes the revolving jubilee, the sky inside all of their hands. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds great.
Okay, so I'm going to read 2 more. So if you've ever been to the gynecologist,
Yes.
that's BS. The stir for BS. And so this poem is called Dear Future Body, Keep Your Skin Thick. Yesterday, my legs were propped in stirrups as the gyno said, you should go on The Biggest Loser. I heard cities at the skull base, stuttering over each other, vying in vowels of your roles in that garden under your chin. The pride real estate of, don't you want to be beautiful? We have known the trap of nameless and hungry BMI indexes. Dear God, in sample size fashion, I escape and get caught in the same geography again and again, unmade and remade. I forget I am more than a house of great bones, of Vaseline and Werther's originals. The caucasity of a well-meaning, she has such a pretty face. I'm writing to tell you about a type of war. People carving the cavalry horses to survive, the outline of social media models, and how many calories is that bottle of air? Those can we eliminate? I thought the planet Pluto was a black girl, now downgraded and mostly out. Dear future body, take a break today. Tell me, how are your kisses? Sometimes they give birth to promises, a season in the word, oil and oxygen at the ready. Are you someone's night moon? Remember to trace what remains, the prayers your mouth learns. I want us living, not just alive. So since this panel's on soul, I thought I'd read to you this poem I wrote after Aretha Franklin died. I was actually at a residency and I was like, do the trees know Aretha's gone? Hence this poem I wrote on the couch that same day. I wish the trees could sway to Marvin and Aretha. Because sometimes I forget soil can do more than hold wood or metal boxes. It pulls on elements my shins have long forgotten. There are 7 different words for dirt in French. We hear what is left in the woods, children with 12 fingers or webbed toes. I used to pray for normal appendages, often stop myself from singing out loud where others could hear, but we know of hush tales. Somebody's calling my name, but where wounds used to go, to the trees, swinging someone's black uncle or son, sometimes daughters under steady stars bright as birthday candles we can't blow. But let's not talk of dark histories. If how you and I are still alive, like 3 flawed maples or perennials on calls, or all standing on a hilltop just over there, with headphones, a seashell of Motown and Aretha, you forget the universe is expanding. If the gods are tired of our sand and stone bones, voodoo ozones. The oldest tree is over 4,000 years old. What if the bark doesn't hold like it used to? The bloom turns shallow, because you can die from survival, you know. It's like working 2 jobs, the weight of limbs in winter. But that tree has breathed a lot of shit. Geographic shadows, but soul music can be prayer. And what if it could reach and restore every carbonated leaf, note, pollinating dreams like bees down to the root, until every bark vibrates under our palm? And what if Marvin and Aretha make them remember what love sounds like? And all the wild things come so close, the trees no longer die standing up. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Cynthia. That was wonderful. And thanks to Amy and everybody who makes the conference go. So I'll read a few poems as well. So my book, Glitter Road, came out in February, and it talks about, it centers around my time at Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, when I was there on fellowship. And we had the opportunity to really explore the landscape. I'm from Norfolk, but I live in Massachusetts, and taking my kids who are New Englanders down there, that was a whole adventure in itself. So we're talking about place, that is a place. So, but we had a wonderful time. The river remembers. Here, the water is silt brown, stretches mile wide, flat as a washed out conveyor belt, an unhemmed rumble strip. I can't read the river, can't see my hand when it plunges elbow deep to feel the cool against the Mississippi heat, hot as a dog's mouth. Here we canoe for hours through swirling eddies, watch the trash barges and towboats travel downstream. The river glistens hard as broken glass. Here, everything is fluid. In lower Mississippi, the south-south, where the 2-lane blacktop cuts through an infinity of flat cotton, soybean, corn, farm, tumble-down shack. Creeks and rivers bifurcate the land like blood veins. Here, the GPS gives up. New islands form at the current's whim, and what is untouched grows lush and verdant. Willow and privet border the collapsing coastline. A carp leaps into the boat when it hears us coming. We stop here at an oxbow. Gumbo mud sticks to our feet. River rock, plastic, fossils, gar. Raccoon and coyote leave tracks in the rust-colored sand. The slaves, sold down the river, hid here, waited for their chance to escape up north, hid in caves, fled to the Twin Cities in Canada, their fate at the mercy of the river's next rise. Here's the nadir of our suffering, which started in one place to end in another. Here's where flow and marvel and history converge. This harm joy, this beautiful sadness. So when we were down there, before we went down there were a few things that happened. So this is 2019. We went down in August. There was a picture of 3 Old Miss students standing next to the marker for Emmett Till. Emmett Till being a 14-year-old boy who was killed in 1955. He was beaten, shot, thrown into the Tallahatchie River. So the marker where he came out of the water was just riddled with bullet holes. And these boys were standing next to it, and it went viral. And so that and a few other things gave us a little bit of pause before we went down. But we did go down, and we were able to go to the rededication ceremony for Emmett Till. And now that spot, along with 2 others, is under federal protection. So it's interesting to think about going down there and being, you know, a very, very small part of that history. At the rededication of the Emmett Till Memorial, Glendora, Mississippi, October 19th, 2019. He was 14, same age as my daughter, who sits beside me on the crowded bus. We travel with police escort, like a funeral procession, to dedicate the new marker at Graball Landing. Along the dirt road, red spider lilies bloom around gnarled roots of aged oaks. Life grows on among the silent brown branches. Delta dust settles to reveal cotton fields ready for harvest. There have been signs, 3. Stolen, shot up, tossed in the river. The last one stood just 35 days, riddled with bullets again and again, refusing us the comfort of leaving the past in the past. Till's story requires hardened steel. This marker weighs 500 pounds. It is black, bulletproof, designed to absorb rifle rounds of white supremacy. And my heart curves around the side of this road, reconciling that old hurt with an old resolve. Every time it's taken down, it's going back up. On the Tallahatchie's bank, we honor, we grieve, let our feet sink into the mud while the brown water rages. You know, because Cynthia read her Franklin poem, I'm going to read my Tina Turner poem.
I love that poem.
Yes, but you have not heard me sing, so here we go. Just brace yourselves. Not that good. Okay. So Tina Turner passed last year, and I had written this poem before she had left us, and it's about, I don't know if you remember the video for What's Love Got to Do with It, but there's this moment where in the video she does this. And I don't know, for most of my adult life, I've been fascinated by that move. Like, why didn't they just take it out? You know? I don't know. But it shows how interesting memory works. Like, why, of all the things to remember, I remember that. What's love got to do with it? And when Tina Turner sings, I've been taking on a new direction. Directing a camera, defiant, her lips glazed in a tumultuous red, she takes her hand and adjusts her honey brown bangs out of her eyes, and then continues to sing about her own protection. That MTV moment, Tina in a denim jacket and leather skirt, her $1 million legs in black seamed hose, wearing "Fuck Ike, this is my video" heels, a long way from Nutbush city limits, indelible on my 15-year-old psyche when I had no idea what love had to do with anything. But I understood it was work, even painful. Watching my parents argue and stay together, years later, arguing with my ex and not staying together. It's only now in my half-life that I can speak of that sweeping gesture, how the imperfectness of the moment stayed with me all these years. Not a gaffe or a faux pas, but for the cutting room floor. But from a woman in full command of her power, flaws and all. Tina's hand gliding like the phases of the moon. That love could be secondhand, given to pleasure. The rough music that remains after the light clap passes through us. Because who needs a heart when a heart can't be broken? So painful every time I do it. Okay, so I think I'll end with one more. So Mississippi was an incredible experience, and one of the things that made it special is that I fell in love. So this is for my boyfriend, who lives in Mississippi. We're long distance. Mississippi season. He says I hold my mind well, likes that I put my kids first and have never tried drugs. The lilt in his southern drawl intoxicates me. He likes not being able to have all of me, makes him want me more. Broken finds broken, I say. So when he kisses my neck, along my clavicle, down to my breast, I break all over again, after a drought of no kissing, no touch. How not being chosen can dim any light. For years, I told myself a story I could live with, thought of myself a kind of carnival fish in a plastic bag, floating in my own still water. Dumb luck that someone flips a red ring on the mouth of a glass jar, and just like that, I am kissing again, kissing a man so luminous, so beautifully flawed, I can barely look at him. And my mind, done with all its stories, turns to the carnal, as I rim the hinge of his lips with my tongue and dive into this quenching. Thank you.
Welcome, Amy.
And now I have the difficult task of going last. I guess I'll just get it over with. Stevie Wonder, that's what I've got for y'all today. I figure all the greats, right? So I'm gonna read. I have to sing a tiny bit. It's just happy birthday to you. It's nothing too bad, but a tiny bit. I figured, my co-panelists are gonna put themselves out there. So this is the poem that my book, Makeshift Altar, derives its title from. It's called The Hood Aesthetic. Naturally, broken glass, throbbing bass, a roll of bills and a paper bag pass between the hands of hustlers. Just as true, the rows of corn planted by the family at the end of the street. Even in this leaded soil, stalks grow fat cobs. The squeal and clatter of barefoot children chasing each other on asphalt, tight braids fly. Shoes abandoned at the back door. Rounds of happy birthday to ya, happy birthday to ya. From an open apartment window, the shuffle of sneaker and swish of net from the basketball players beneath. In the morning, I step outside, the starlings, wings like whale slicks, construction, the smell of hot tar releasing a wavering haze of heat. I wave to a neighbor sitting on the stoop, shirtless and smiling. What neither of us know is that he will be dead a year from now. His body will lie at the front steps of our building. His dreadlocks will splay across concrete. Another makeshift altar erected at the lamppost on the corner. So flowers, laminated pictures, empty liquor bottles. For today, Al Green's falsetto wafts across the street as the blue faces of cornflowers overwhelm the empty lot where a building once burned, as August clutches us to her chest, leaving us slick with possibility. I'll read one of the first poems from my book, Appalachia to LGA. LGA being LaGuardia Airport, Queens, which is where I'm from. Through double plexiglass panes, I trace swollen river inlets and muddy deltas. White smoke flowers from the mouths of bottom-heavy smokestacks. In West Virginia, by God, I feel the boundary of dense green woodland, willowy fingers on my gasping throat. But I am not of these mountains. I am Queens concrete, endless signs in every alphabet, from subway cars and women therein who weep, hold on to yellow grocery bags while the 7 screeches along track's edge. I map a path back to my mother and her mother, one purging her life of detritus, old LPs, books she will not read, old husbands, and the other's urge to hang on to it all, a horde of VHS tapes featuring nations she will never see for fear of flying, forming a wild topography in her hallway. I follow the line from Flushing and Laurelton, back to that first Jamaica, sunken redbirds snaking an undersea railway stretching from Queens to Plantation Heat in Kingston and St. Anne's Parish, out to an avenue named for my French Catholic forefather who crossed himself before coming in my Yoruba foremother. I dare myself to return, to want this return, cloud quiver above ocean reef, skirting the continent of what is. And now for something completely different. An old white woman touched my hair at Rising Creek Bakery. She asked if it was real, and then her hand, already on its way, brushed my left shoulder. The woman was wearing a sweater and long pants on a 90-degree day, years old. This does not excuse her. This does not excuse me for saying nothing, for my forced smile and flight. The only other black woman in the bakery had her hair under her scarf. All the ways we protect ourselves. The old woman's hair was spiked, sparse, and silvery. I should have touched her strands as she reached for mine. We could have stood there, fondling each other's hair until my spouse finished with the restroom, till her grandson finished with his order, came to unentangle us. Aerodynamics. When I say, my parents met on a plane, what I mean is my existence is airborne. What I mean is I am not from here, that my parents, my family still hover above an Americanness none of us can fully know, that we have been, are right now being reborn as American, as Caribbean, as the tear shape of a plane's wing, as propeller, as immigrant, as dreamer, as blue, as black, as brown, as success, as failure, as if this country's constitution, its manic manifesto, was folded into a paper plane that landed right on Sally Hemings' lap, and she tossed it to Louverture, to Sharp, to Albizu Campos, as if we belonged here, as if we were meant to survive, as if. And let's read this last poem for you, and then we'll shift into some conversation amongst ourselves. Street corner market, Philadelphia. I spot the gold fruit piled high in green paper baskets. Can't help the ooh that spills as I reach toward them. The moo-mooed woman standing in front of me turns, saying, "Smell brings me back to Virginia." High yellow, plum round, she tells me fields her granddaddy owned, sold, meadows she girled through. We talk counties, Carolina, Henrico. We talk tobacco, sunflower seed. We speak of what hung in those orchards. Though I've only known this land on car windows of visits to kin, and my orchards were city parks, mulberries fermenting on concrete, something in me understands the honey of child in field. She says, "I was home today watching TV and praising some sweet, some fresh, you know?" We dare one another to bite into her bounty before parting. Our teeth score skin, juice racing rivulets toward elbows. We give ourselves over to sweet. Thank you all so much. We're going to shift into a little kind of panel discussion. So I have some questions for these magnificent poets, and we'll just kind of have some chat, and then we'll open it up to a bit of Q&A. And again, a reminder, during that Q&A, there'll be some just feedback forms that'll be filled out. It'd be wonderful if you could do that for us. So I guess first set of questions. I wanted to ask about place. All of our work is deeply connected to place. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And the South, it seems particularly for all of us. So January, I'd first like to hear your thoughts about writing in and about Mississippi, as you are in New England and from Virginia. And then Cynthia, I'd like to hear about your writing about the South, Southern culture, and Southern food, as a New Yorker.
Okay. It's funny, being from Virginia, I'm surprised at how few poems I have about Virginia, so that might be next on my list. But I guess I'm used now to the New England landscape, and so going down to Mississippi was a complete, not complete, but it was definitely a bit of a culture shock. I mean, but in the best way. I mean, I was thrilled to go down there. It was for the John and Renee Grisham Writer of Residence, which is one of those magical things that you don't apply for, it just happens. And so to be thought of as somebody worthy of it was on another level. And then pulling my kids into it, bringing them down, you know, they missed a year of high school, in their own habitat to come down with me. So it was great, but the first 7 months was about learning how to get around in town. So it was all about the place. It was, we're away from home, we're living in a place that's remote compared to campus and the rest of the community. So it was quite the experience. It was amazing. It came with a little trepidation. I mean, not only was the Emmett Till incident concerning, at the time in 2019, the state was considering getting rid of the Stars and Bars Confederate flag, which they had not done yet. They did in 2020. And there was a large Confederate statue on the grounds of the campus. So every time somebody came in and came out, they were sort of confronted with this thing. And the campus, the community wanted it down, but they weren't acting quick enough, fast enough. It was the time to get it down. It came down, was moved in 2020. But all of that was swirling, so it was all about place. And I mean, in the writing, place is almost as important as, anything else. It's almost like another character in the story. So, the experience changed my life, and I hope that comes through in the writing, because it really left an impact on me. And I didn't want to write about a place and then go and then I'm off to something else. I go back there. It's a part of me now. So.
Well, for me, place is home, and home is basically my mother. Wherever she is, that's where home is. My mom and dad are both from Santee, South Carolina, so the house is always full of Southern cooking, full of grits, full of Southern sayings. Just everything is very dramatic, but also very musical. So I think all those things come place in my poems. And I also think that as a New Yorker, my poems, I don't have a lot of poems about New York or Brooklyn in this book, but I feel like my New Yorkness comes out when I'm in certain poems. I'm definitely, I can be a little bit blunt, I can be sarcastic, I can be hilarious. And that's all things that New Yorkers, I think, are good at being. Getting to the point, but also making you work to get there.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I just briefly will say, as a New Yorker who's lived in Boston, West Virginia, spent a lot of time in Virginia, I kind of feel like there's like this sweeping motion like through the kind of eastern corridors of the United States. And then my family's from the Caribbean, so Puerto Rico and Jamaica primarily. And so it comes this kind of like interesting kind of sweeping, like just through like this Eastern Atlantic kind of enculturation, both of Southern place and culture. A lot of my family lives in Georgia and in Virginia and in Florida, so there's that kind of Southernness. But then there's like the South of like the Caribbean. And one of the most beautiful things is kind of recognizing and realizing as I spend more time in the South, all the ways that Black foodways are interconnected. And I see a lot of that kind of working through your work for both of you, just thinking about how Black foodways, African foodways are always interconnected. You're seeing the same
community, right?
Yes.
Food becomes community. It means I want to offer you a plate. It means I trust you. Come into my home. Are you okay?
Yes.
It's a language underneath the language.
Yes. Yeah, and I love that, because I saw that in both of your pieces. It's like these moments of kind of foodways, like you have the oyster poem, January, which I absolutely love, which is very New England, right? But that was in the South, right? And that, like, you start High on the Hog, if you haven't watched it on Netflix. Like looking at oysters is actually being like, it's a Black foodway. Like it's one of our traditional foodways. And then like your poem about potato salad, which is so fantastic. And filled with humor and beauty and love, which I just love that. I have a poem about sancocho, which is a Puerto Rican stew, which is, again, like if you look at like a lot of different like Southern stews, right? It's the same list of ingredients, right? It's this kind of beautiful through line.
So think about returning, Amy. When I was younger, we spent summers going down south on the Grey Dog, aka Greyhound. And so we all part of these generations where really people on the stoop in Brooklyn, you would go down to your grandma's house and burn trash. that's what you did, and so now you know that process. You know how they speak, you know how the names seem musical, how they meander everywhere, like you begin to love it. You come back to Brooklyn, you're like, oh, I'm back here. Okay.
My mom is from Atlanta, so we spent quite a few summers down there, and I remember, one year we went to a hog, we roasted a hog or something. It was great, but it was so...
Yeah, roasted peanuts.
Yeah.
Boiled
Oh,
peanuts.
yeah. Boiled peanuts.
Boiled peanuts?
Peanuts,
Okay,
yeah.
that's the man. Yeah, I had a boiled peanut.
Yeah.
Get your life.
I just want to keep on moving because I think this is such a rich conversation. I was just going to talk a little bit just about being Black women and thinking about the idea of embodiment. We talk about embodiment a lot as poets, embodied poetry, but I guess I'm talking about it both like conceptually as embodiment within the poem, but also like the physical embodiment within poems. So I just wanted to know if you could both speak to the role of embodiment in your work as a poet and how it allows you to convey joy, pain, rapture, all these beautiful things on the page. And you were absolutely all in. I'd love if you read poems in response to this question. It'd be amazing.
I was thinking about, I didn't read it, I almost read it. I have a poem called Black Women, and, just sort of being, an important part of the fabric of this country. And I mean, every election cycle, it's like, Black women saved the day. I'm like, we've been here the whole time. Carrying that weight is a lot. And then, trying to work in all sorts of spaces and to be faithful and remember who you are and still be present in the world and work with others and bring people together. And, for me, I do a lot of work in arts administration. So, to have conferences like this and say, we need to have Black artists, Black writers, Black women involved, and we need to get them behind the scenes too so that they can, make sure that this stays. That's very important. That's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read a poem called I Learned to Be a Lady. On summer mornings, I craved blackened foothills and backyard lakes, water streaking barrettes to an almost paradise crown of 4 little knots on my head, and layers of dirt from days of playing so hard I sprawled, a dizzy starfish with 5 points ready to slay mongo trees, trap dragon hide, or moonwalk with cherry, lime, blow pop in hand. But one day, an older knot says, girl, you better clean the dirty feet, the devil don't know your name. Putting a lid on thirst, I copy Grace from Church Ladies, TV mom Felicia Rashad, and Kim Fields as Tootie. Turn to bottles to smooth hairline edge, stockings baptized and scabbed lady legs. Be glossy-lipped, used dark and lovely, unfurled feet in the earth, only in the shade where no one else can see. So when I think of the Black body, right, we go through these phases of childhood where everything is full of wonder. And then suddenly you're told, well, you're a girl, so that one needs to be in tights, the one needs to be locked down. So then as you're getting older, you're trying to think, well, how can I be myself in all these spaces? How can I wear my church, tights, and how can I wear my locks, and how can I be all of me? And it has to be learned, actually. Because we're doctrined to not be all of you. We're doctrined to be as small as possible, to fit to this slot, and we have to learn to be all of ourselves, all of our bodies, and where we go. I think poetry is a way to sort of reveal that, and then also get by it.
I also just wanted to mention here, I have a few poems I'd like to read at home. I'm reading after Cynthia again. But I realized I have several poems that are really about that idea and process of embodiment. Embodying, sure. I was thinking about 2. I think I might read, let's see, which weirder of the 2.
I love the weird poems. Weird poems don't get published, but we love them the most. All authors have weird poems that
we all do have weird
that
poems.
never get published, but we love them so much.
Yeah. Yeah, and like this is like I think like this poem has been performed more than it's been published. It's called "This Is My Body." Naked arms, sagging jowl, knuckle pop, cystic breast, tilted uterus, When I've stood naked before mirrors, when I've twisted before mirrors, both pleased and mortified by my abominable body. Firmness giving way to wrinkles, pimples, chin hair, dust to dust. I've wished my body invisible, as if it were possible for women in this country with my face to be invisible. When I wish I'd not said what I'd said, which is most of the time when I say. I've wished for my body to fold in on itself, bones, rice paper, until I'm small enough to slide into a pocket, until I'm small enough to disappear into the ever-vernal continuum, luminous and broken for you. Kind of going back to the idea of communion, this is my body broken for you, right? How many times have Black women's bodies been broken for the sake of this country? That was my weird poem. It's So the wonderful folks here at the Virginia Festival of the Book put our work in conversation because of all the ways that we are sharing joy and elegy, pain and humor in our work. So I always wanted you, January and Cynthia, to kind of speak to ways in which you feel like your senses of humor and capacity for joy allow you to convey truth and beauty on the page, even when that is painful.
It was very important to me to put together a book talking about so many heavy subjects with Emmett Till and racism and how things are in Mississippi, you know, to talk about joy also. I mean, there were a lot of wonderful things that happened in Mississippi for me, including falling in love and, you know, getting my kids through another year. So, I mean, there were a lot of blessings, and I just think sometimes the focus is on the pain and the traumatic, which are important, but it's the flip side of all the joy and happiness. So, it's extremely important. In fact, like the quote at the beginning of the book is by poet Toy Derricott, one of my teachers. Joy is an act of resistance, and I wholeheartedly believe that. And I can't think of anything better to frame that book and conversation like this. I mean, joy is at the heart of, I'm sure, what we do, right? But it doesn't get highlighted as much. So.
Yeah, and I love that about your book. Like you said, like Black poets aren't writing. Like your book is a book of love poems. And it's absolutely beautiful and emotional, and it's about finding love again and finding love in a place you can expect to find it.
And being a Black woman of a certain age.
Yes. Yeah, there's an absolute beauty in that, and I really love reading it.
You know, I always say that we don't write about our joy, but think we're not human enough to deserve it. And so when I'm in panels and they're talking to me about, pain and freedom, I'm like, well, don't forget the joy. Even though things are going on, I'm still gonna love my brother and my mom and my sister. I'm still gonna go to work tomorrow. I'm still gonna, babysit my goddaughter. I'm still gonna have joy in eating chocolate cake. I'm still gonna have joy in eating grits. So let's not let the overarching negativity overarch anything else. You're already taking away from me, my right to breath. My right to live is mine. I'm going to live it with joy if possible. I also say that if you only write about what hates us, we'll forget to write about what loves us. So if you keep writing about all the trauma in the world, how are you going to take care of yourself? How are you going to take care of yourself? After opening that wound, how are you going to take care of yourself and people around you? So I think you're writing as an artist, you have to make sure that if you're going to output, make sure what you input is also of equal measure. So not only is the reader getting the experience, but you're also being not harmed from that experience. Yeah. I got sad and I meant, I like joy. I got sad and I meant, I like joy. Joy is great. I also think the idea of wonderment. Yes, I think we lose, when we're kids, we're like, oh, why is ketchup red? What are the stars doing when I can't see them? Can lollipops talk to other lollipops? Okay, but then we get older and you don't do that anymore. But I love the idea of wondering about things and asking good questions. And I think good questions can come out of joy.
Asking about the things you don't know.
Yes. And the stars talk to other stars, or the moon and the sun, are the enemies or friends? You don't know. But I like the idea of asking and wondering about that. And that wondering also brings joy.
And I see that in your work. You question a lot. I think you're sort of layered. Your pieces are layered with
very curious person.
Yeah.
Very curious person.
That's how you become.
It's in your title.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I'm just going to read a brief, tiny poem that is just about joy. Like there's nothing tragic in this poem. It's one of the few in my book. And also it's my take on the poem. So if you'll like seafood, you'll understand. Is the crab is king. All right, so it's called Carolina Beach. On the pier, under a waltz of light, couples shuffle toward pink neon bar signs, advertising half-off pitchers and Sunday morning services. Tonight, the moon is a cross-section of elephant tusk, lighting a silver path from horizon to shore. Push-pull in full effect. You dump boiled crabs on the newspaper table. You crack carapace. You suck sweetness from knuckle and claw. I think that's what we're doing here, sucking sweetness from knuckle and claw.
I also think that we, as even writers, people forget how many people love us. The first poem in my book is actually a 4-line tanka. It's called Tanka for a Beginning. I keep forgetting how many people love me. These wild hands plucked from wild waters, Dixie Rose, 2 Afro clouds bursting one night. So joy is also that realization that, hey, you are loved. By 1 person, 2, 5, 8, but it's out there. So keep recognizing that as well as you go through life.
Yes, absolutely. I'd like to open it up to questions from you all. Yes, sir.
Ms. O'Neill, I was a reporter. I spent the early part of my career back in the late 60s and 1970s covering the aftermath of the civil rights movement, largely in Mississippi. And the first poem that you read tonight reminded me so much of my time in the Delta, up around the Tallahatchie area. And it evoked in me, it reminded me of both the just extraordinary beauty of the place and the fear and nervousness that we had to reconcile with that beauty every day. And I just wanted to thank you for making me feel young again. I really appreciate
thank
it.
you. I mean, it's it's an amazing place down there, and to some, in some respect, a lot of it has not changed. Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market, which is where Ed Till reportedly, allegedly whistled at a white woman. It's in such disrepair. And part of that is, the community letting it go. It's under different ownership. There's a big story around that. But the fact that it hasn't been preserved, that's part of it. What gets remembered and what we let go of, and that is why these stories are important. So, if you were to go down, I think you would be surprised, but it would feel very familiar. So, thank you.
So I have a question. So, am I in the way? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ray, for running with the mic.
So I have a question. Well, first I have a statement. The joy and wonderment, thank you so much. That's one of the most inspiring things I've heard in a long time. And second, I'm not a poet, and I know you only have a few seconds or minutes, but how do you do it? Where does the poems come from?
Oh, sorry, no. Okay.
Head off.
Where did they come from? Wow, that's a really good question. I think everyone has a really interesting way of processing the world, right? We all have our kind of own thing that we do to kind of process what's happening. I think that, so my spouse who's here is a musician and processes the world through music. When I have an experience, I process the world through words, and I've always processed the world through words. So whether it's joy or pain, whatever it might be, rapture, it ends up kind of coming to me in a series of words. Sometimes I don't know where the poems come from. There's a poem in this book that I wrote about Breonna Taylor. I do not know where the poem came. It came to me fully formed, which is a very rare thing that ever happens for me. And like the month after her death, and it just came to me. It just sat in my head. It came to me right before I went to sleep. I got up the next day and I wrote it, and that was it. And the poem, as it is on the page, is very nearly the poem that came to me that night. Most of the time, though, it's like I take a note on my phone, which my students kind of got me into, like just using the phone for notes when you have an idea, you have paper on you. Sometimes it's like it's in a notebook. Sometimes I'm journaling or kind of processing something else, and the poem will start, and I'm like, oh, well, there goes that. So time to start writing this poem. But yeah, I think that's kind of that's where it begins. It's life. You live, you experience, and then how do you process as an artist?
What she said. For me, I'm a very curious person, and I ask questions. So usually my poems start from either I'm mad at something or I have a question. And when I'm reading something, I take notes when I'm reading. So I have, even if I have a book, I have this paper in it with scrap notes. I'm like, ooh, that's a great word. And I write it, scrap down. And I'll go through the whole book the whole time. So I have, and at the end of the book, I can scrap paper, put another book. So I have books of phrases or words or images or just things that I like. And I'll go back to that when I need to write something. And so for me, in some poems, do fall out of me. Like the Aretha Franklin poem, literally, I went to a walk in the woods, came back, and then I wrote it. Basically, like anything down. That doesn't happen very, very often. Usually, a poem has to, you write it, you think it's amazing, you go to bed, but the next day, it's not amazing. You have to really bring in your craft and whatnot. But it usually comes from questioning something or wondering about something.
Very similar experience, but I also carry a journal around, so whenever a scrap of a phrase comes around, I'll jot it down. Maybe I misunderstand conversations, and that's usually a source of
Ear hustle.
Yeah,
ear hustling.
I like that. I like that. But I was thinking about my process and how it's changed. And I'd say, during the pandemic, when we weren't going anywhere, when we weren't talking to one another, I really had to lean into making every day, doing something every day, looking at the world differently. My pandemic purchase was a bird feeder. You can only write about cardinals and chickadees, robins. So, trying to find the wonder in the everyday, I think, is where it comes out. And so, sometimes we stop ourselves from doing our art, and I say that broadly because not all of us are writers. Some of us are cooks, and some of us play music, and some of us, is in it, right? Yeah. So whatever it is that keeps us whole and sane and centered, that's the stuff we should fight for, and that's the stuff we let go of first. Oh, I've got to make this call or check this email or talk to someone. So being able to find space in our lives to honor that part of ourselves, which is really saying, I need a few minutes to be with myself. So whether it's writing down a phrase, creating a little space around us to do our art is really a gift. It's a gift to us as artists, but it's a gift to the people around us,
Yeah, another question.
One more question.
Yeah, right.
January, I'm really curious, even though it's not exactly your experience, but the experience of your kids in that year and how maybe you've seen that has impacted either the choices they're making or how they're processing life.
Sure. So my teenagers are now adults. My son is in his second year at Syracuse University. My daughter is at Mass Art, which is like the oldest public art school in the country, Massachusetts. So, going down to Old Miss as sophomore or freshman, and I work at a college. I work at Salem State, Massachusetts. I thought it would help my son more, and I think it did. He missed a year of basketball, so that was tough. But, he had to go, when he wanted to play, like he didn't have any friends, so he'd go out there and he'd have to go and play with the college students. And I think that gave him something, and this is what college life is going to be like. So it was a little bit of a preview for him. My daughter, I think, had a little bit harder time because she's a loner. But she turned inward and she became an artist. I mean, she had connections back home. She is a D&D, like game master, whatever it's called. So like she can plan and organize, and she just put herself into an art show as a freshman that has nothing to do with the school. And I'm like, that courage has to come from somewhere. Like if there's no one to do something with, then you kind of have to do it yourself. I think those are the things that my kids learned, how to be, the beginnings of how to be. And to relate to other people who are, different, to get out of our New England bubble and to see, everybody, we just want to take care of our families, we want to go to work, we want to, I don't think we want to do any harm. I think that message was underlined in Mississippi. There are good people everywhere.
Other questions? Yeah.
So it's not a question, but more so just a recognition. I just want to thank you guys for being here. I feel so seen. I recognize the multiple identities that are on this panel. I think that's so important, which sort of leads to my curiosity and an open question that I feel like can be answered ongoing. But feel that intersectionality has taken place in your work? And I'm sorry, Cynthia, you mentioned how you're from New York, but you haven't really written a poem about New York, but your aesthetic is definitely from New York. I'm from New York, so automatically I like that. I know she's from New York. So I don't know, how can you maybe briefly elaborate a little bit more on how that shows up in your work, your multiple identities, if you will?
I think for this book, my first book, it was definitely looking back in the past, how my family got to where they are. And this book says, okay, now we're here, and we've gone past survival, how are we gonna live? So when I think about how we're gonna live our lives, well, how are we gonna find love? How are we gonna find community? How are we gonna take care of ourselves? How are we gonna look at the universe? How are we going to be curious, to take risks? Be curious and not take risks. Because I think for me, I sort of blend my curiosity in place in different ways. Like I'll do it either via recognition, or I'll see something like, oh, that's really dope. And I'll say, well, that reminds me of my grandmother. How can I put those two things together? Or I'll say, well, I'll be somewhere, and I was like, oh, you know what? This wind is like really Brooklyn today. So I'll write a fast poem. Or, I think or if I'm in a poem, I'm in a bad mood, I'll write a little bit harder, meaning my jam is a little bit tougher, or I'll write with slashes because I talk fast, so I will make sure the poem is fast. So I think I find little ways to make sure my Brooklynness and New Yorkerness is in each poem, but I still have the musicality of my Southern mom, and I still have the musicality of welcoming. Like I don't want you to come to any poem of mine and not feel welcome. You may not get it, but you're gonna feel welcome. So that's how I bridge it. I think that's how I bridge the Southern and the New York. Be welcome to my space. Shop around, look around, touch things, and you gotta go. You gotta go.
We might have time for one last question.
Are they all stunned?
And if there are no questions, our books are available right in the back. We will be over here signing. Thank you all so much for coming this afternoon.
Thank you,
really
guys.
Appreciate you. Thank you.